How do you explain your phenomenal wealth, Mr. McDuck?
Simple. I made it by being smarter than the Smarties and tougher than the Toughies. I made it square.
Scrooge McDuck is the world's richest duck. He loves his money all 5 multipajillion, 9 impossibadillion, 7 fantastic trillion dollars and 16 cents of it. He loves it so much because he worked so hard to earn it. He loves it so much because he worked just as hard to keep it. He knows exactly where he got each coin he so carefully hoards. Together, they tell the story of his life. Beginning with his number one dime, the first coin he ever earned, which he placed lovingly on a velvet pillow. But how did he earn that dime? How did he get to be so rich? What is the story of his life? Well, apparently it's none of our business. But you know what? That's not what we're here for. A fundamental question that's asked, and by fundamental I mean a couple people I know have asked the question, how did he get so rich? How did this duck become the 0.1% of the 0.1% of the 1%? And it's a fun question. A question that doesn't really get answered. Well, it was answered one time, really well. And to be fair, it's an interesting question, as I'd said before, as if I don't quite know what I'm talking about. The question has always been, where does this money come from? Barks himself sort of just start off going like, well, he's a rich old uncle, so he drew money in like a scene like, hey, there's some on his desk, there's some here in the background, is more and more. He got disgustingly more rich as the series went on, and Barks like, well, he's just the richest man in the world. There you go. So the question is sort of the how and the who. And in Only a Poor Old Man, which is Scrooge's first comic book appearance, which we reviewed, it's gotta be somewhere. The question was asked by the boys to get the banking. Like, banking? No. I get it on the seas and the mines and the cattle wars, the old frontier. I made it by being tougher than the toughies and smarter than the smarties, and I made it square. And that sort of paints this like epic idea of Scrooge. And I love it. I've always loved it. And we see the question of like, hey, the dollar 1898 got the Klondike. And this is sort of where Don Rose's Life of Scrooge comes in. So in this one, so like say this scene here, this like scene here, the silver dollar in the Klondike. All right, King of the Klondike, hit 8. All right, great story. Then we have other things that talking about the 1882 dollar they got Montana where he punched cows for a homestead, and then he decides to dig for copper. That is part 4. It's like I can't remember them all of a sudden. The reason I talk about it like this is because for the Life of Scrooge series, what Rosa did, and the brilliance of Rosa was he didn't really pull a bunch of random mess out of his head. He used pretty much everything Bark said, like, hey, can we craft a story around this? And he did. Took maybe one or two creative liberties here or there. That depends on how you view it, but overall, he was crafting a narrative to explain where the money comes from. And he using something as simple as like, hey, Scrooge knows how to speak to comrades because he did the pearl trade in Asia. Or, when he was salvaging treasure on the Spanish Main, he found lots of papers in the bottom sea and they were in jars. And what happens? Well, Rosa draws that and it's really great. Or, hey, the pearl trade in Asia. This is interesting because it crafts this idea of Scrooge as not just a one-time person. Like, when Scrooge says, like, in the banking and the cattle frontiers and the mines and the seas, it's like, yeah, I've done everything possible to achieve this gross amount of wealth. All right? And one would think it's probably not interesting. No, it is interesting. It is interesting to see him travel the world. All right? And for some reason, not really be in Asia. Like, we hear about it, but it's never really there. A lot of the stories tend to focus in Europe and Australia. But that's not here. This is actually why I like the Life of Scrooge series, because it does span out his character. But that's not why we're revisiting this series again. For those of you that may or may not remember, we did the Life of Scrooge series before. This is our redo of the series, Redux. And the reason I did it now is because, well, 87 DuckTales is over, D17 is over. Let's sort of talk about how these series sort of play into the story of Scrooge. And really, as much as I love 87 Scrooge, like, oh my god, it's my favorite, And I have mixed feelings about D17. Actually, I don't particularly like D17 Scrooge, but whatever. He's fun in his own way. In terms of like him as the character, how this money came to be, both of these series tend to sort of make it kind of boring. Now, to be fair, 87 Scrooge at least makes him fun. All right, in terms of like how he started versus how he ended up. But even the story sort of goes like, yeah, I hit one hurdle uh, with my Uncle Catfish. After that, smooth sailing. Smooth sailing. D17 Scrooge has none of that charm, or any of the charm of any of them in terms of his how he became so rich. He sort of just comes off as like an unlikable jerk, but whatever, whatever. Um, I'm there's no real solid motion issue there. I think it all starts from the ground up. Like it mentions, hey, number one dime, then I became rich. It just sort of doesn't work for me. It maybe works for other people, and that's fine, but that's not what we're here for. We're not here to talk about your feelings. We're going to talk about my feelings. About this, anyway. We're not going to go to my therapy sessions. But anyway, so one thing that I appreciated coming back to the series, listening to the Barks Marks podcast and the Rose Marks podcast. I'm on more of those episodes, by the way. Is the phrase, I'll be a poor old duck. And this is something that is, from my perspective, has always been there, even from the beginning as an 87 fan. Like, the idea is that if Scrooge loses this money, the money in the bin, he's done. And it never made sense to me, even as a kid. I'm like, wait, doesn't he have money in, like, other places? Like, even later, they'll say, well, I've got money in banks all over Duckburg. And I'm like, since you have a world empire, it stands to reason you have money in banks all over the world. And Rose will mention that, of course. So it seems here Rosa sort of re-envisions that, almost reworks it to the idea that what he means by that is the money means more than just its monetary value. He says here, like he knows exactly where each coin he so carefully hoards uh, comes from. All right, it means something to him. It's a story of his life. There is honestly a sort of a romantic side to Scrooge. Someone who looks back fondly on his life and the ups and downs, the highs and lows. That is what he loves about his money. It's there. It is that representation of everything he's worked so hard for. And for that particular money, it is just that personified. So, in a lot of ways, what we're hearing here is if you take that, you take everything I've worked for. All the pride and accomplishments is gone with that. To steal his memories, to steal his life is what really makes him a poor old man. And what's interesting about the life of Scrooge is that it sort of takes idea like, all these big businesses, all this, like, okay, so how they come to be? Well, it's like, well, I can't tell all of that. That would take forever. And I'd have to make up a lot of stuff. But let's sort of focus on some highlights. Sort of the idea we see a young 10-year-old Scrooge, like, seeing this huge family legacy, courtesy of the old castle secret. But in that story, we see Scrooge's family, his history, and we see Castle McDuck. And this huge legacy that Scrooge sort of comes from. And through number one dime, he's inspired to go to America and trying to make something of himself, to become a rich man. And it's a fun story, that sort of American dream coming in. And we see it's sort of like an almost Forrest Gump-esque Bambi approach to it. But what I mean by that is, Life of Scrooge is the story of a person's life. Bambi and Forrest Gump are the same thing in that. But what's cool about Forrest Gump is that we see America happen around Forrest. And the same thing happens here. As Scrooge goes through life, he meets people in history. He plays some significant and some not so good moments in history. The Titanic! Oh, 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 oh. But that is sort of the real beauty of it. And I know some people sort of go to the over the top moments, but something really cool about it is Scrooge's failures. Like, he does not come in like, yep, I went in and I was just making the money. No, no, no. Horrible failures. Sometimes due to bad timing, bad situations, or he just couldn't make it work. And he's like, you know what? I'm not going to give up. I'm going to keep trying. There's always another rainbow. And as sappy as that sounds, It is true. There's always another rainbow, another chance. You just have to be willing to look for it. But then there's also what this adventure does to him. He's not the same 13-year-old boy who left America. As he goes through, the events not only make him smarter and wiser, they have a negative effect on him too. All right, and he builds his own rogues gallery in a way similar to that of, say, Batman. Look, as I go through, some people just wanted to try me, and guess what? I tried back. There we go, like Whiskervilles, Beagle Boys, the McVipers, Flint Heart, Glimglod, Glipglorp, Steven, and moments that challenge his character, which are some of my favorite moments, all right? And how he's rewarded for that, and how he finally hits pay dirt, like after all that hard work, and he comes back a great hero esque. And then his relationship with his father and his sisters, which is actually one of my favorite moments. This also, and of course, we'll see a very low point for Scrooge. And actually, this low point is actually really great. Oh my God, it's so good. It's so good. It's so good. We see the character hit such a great point. In other words, you know how people talk about, say, Watchmen? Like Watchmen totally redefined the superhero genre, or Dark Knight Returns, like, oh, we redefined and deconstructed the character, and now he's better and whatnot. This sort of does that for Scrooge. It elevates him from just an everyday Disney character to a character that stands on his own feet. He's the only character that has an actual origin story in universe. All right, out of all the Disney Toon characters, Scrooge is that one. Right, he has the beginning, he has a middle, he has an end as to how and why he is the way he is. And there's some great moments for that, some great consequences, some great struggles, some great strife. And what's even better is we see exactly how much that has changed him. Sometimes for the better, sometimes for the worse. And the question really is he really the world's richest man? And there was a dramatic enough pause. You think so? I think so. And culminating in the meeting of the century. So, that's what we're doing here with our return to the Life of Scrooge series. Eh, I hope you like it. I had fun making it. We learned a lot while we were doing this. You may have seen it actually already come out accidentally because I'm bad at dating things, and I thought I'd have this new computer before then. Paid out of pocket for this up front. Oh, that was bad. That was bad. But anyway, so we have a new computer. We're still getting to the gist of it and whatnot. Even a new coat to sort of symbolize it. Might go back to the green one. Who knows? But anyway. By the time this one comes out, you will see. Oh God, I forgot. I forgot when you do that, it happens. I love it so much. I love you guys, by the way. So anyway. We've already gotten the first 7 chapters done, and we've got some in between chapters too for that. So yeah, with that in mind, this brings to a close here. If you're new to the Bug Think, feel free to like, comment, share, subscribe, smash that thumbs up button. I'll catch you all later. This is Bug Think signing off. Thanks for watching. As always, may your fandom serve you well, and fireworks.